God is good, and with each day that passes brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. And today, guys, we are going to be talking about crafting because Visionary Realms unloaded on us a ton of information about crafting, so we know all kinds of things now of how crafting is going to work in this MMORPG, and I'm super excited to bring that information over to you. Now, we got a lot to cover, so got to move quick, but if you're new here, please consider subscribing, supporting this channel. That way really helps, and of course leaving a like and a comment down below feeds that hungry algorithm of YouTube that really helps the channel as well. Also want to give a very big shout out to the members of Napalm. Thank you all so very much for keeping this channel alive. You are the sponsors of this channel. I could not do this without you. And if you're interested in becoming a member, please click the join button down below for more information and a list of perks, and I have brand new packages available. And on that note, I want to give a very special thank you to Reiko, who's the highest tier and really putting forth a large monetary investment into this channel. Really appreciate you, Reiko. Now let's get started. So first of all, it's worth noting right from the get-go that stats are super important in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, much more so, as stated by Nefel, who's heading up the crafting in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, than other MMOs. And that's just because of the difficulty of the game. It's because of how all the abilities are laid out and kind of rely on the stats for how effective they are, and on and on. With that in mind, the basic outline, the basic idea for crafting is that instead of simply having a recipe and you need so many of this item, so many of that, and so many of this and that, and then when you have all those components, you know, you make the item. Instead of it being that simple and that cut and dry, what Pantheon's more going for is, as Nefel said, say you want a breastplate, but the components you decide to use are up to you, depending on what kind of result you want to get, right? So maybe use a higher tier steel that's really heavy, very durable, right? To get more defense out of it, right? But that's going to have a con to it. So everything's going to be, you know, if you're really good at one thing, then you're going to have to suffer as something else, right? So it's very heavy, right? This kind of steel is very heavy. So maybe you want a lighter steel, you know, for lighter weight, a little bit less protection, but a little bit lighter on your weight for your character. Doesn't slow you down, you know, things like that. Also, of course, there's going to be rare materials or exotic materials that you can get bonuses on. Now, what you decide to put into that breastplate is completely up to you. You're going to get varying results depending on the materials you decide to use will get you varying results. And of course, I'm sure there's some RNG. Looks like in this as well. You can fail, things like that. And of course, I'm sure that you could, you know, get really lucky and get a little extra couple of pluses to whatever stat it is. But the main idea here is that when you do have an exotic material that you found out in the world, you can make it even more customizable, right? And you can make these very specific kind of pieces of gear that will meet a very specific person and what they're looking for that particular piece of gear. So it's very cool. Now, real quick, before I babble on for too long, let's play a clip where they actually showed the crafting at work. Here we go.
Okay, so as we start off this blacksmithing video, the first thing that Ronak is doing is he's smelting down all that ore that he gathered earlier because he needs to get some iron out of it. Now, what we have in the game right now is very, very simple. And so really there's only iron to work with, but you can imagine in the final game, you might have anywhere from, 8 to 12 different kinds of metals that you can choose from when you're crafting something. So smelting down this ore is going to get Ronak some quantity of iron, and it might also get him some other resources as well. And then he'll be able to take that iron and use it to start making different kinds of components.
Silver nuggets.
So, yeah, there you go. So he's, if you didn't notice, he's also getting some silver nuggets out of this ore that he's smelting. So it's sort of a bonus resource. So once he's got this, and I'm watching the video to make sure that we actually get to this point, but once he's got this ore all smelted down, the next step is obviously turning it into something that can be used, because a chunk of ore by itself is not super useful for making a weapon. The way that we handle almost every type of crafting within Pantheon is we have an item that I call a schematic item, and that could be a cast or a mold or a pattern or any sort of item along those lines. So you think of it as it's the template that you would use to create like a sword blade or a sword hilt or a shield blank or any sort of component that you might use to make a finished item. those schematics are really important. They're going to be base level schematics that you can easily find in the world. You can buy them from NPCs. You can pick them up in various places, but then there's also going to be rare versions that make more interesting and unique components. Your base level schematic might make you a Thronefast style sword or a King's Reach style sword, but if you want, an Elven Royal Guard blade, it's going to be a little harder to find a schematic for that. So you'll be able to get some rare versions of schematics as well as you go. Now, what Ronak is doing here is he's actually creating a sword blade, and he's using the Celestium Dust of Might that he picked up earlier. And what that is going to do is actually create that. I'm sorry, he's not creating the sword blade yet. He's creating the metal bar. But that metal bar is going to have a stat bonus attached to it. That Celestium Dust of Might actually gives him a stat bonus on that bar. And there are many different kinds of Celestium Dust out there that he can use to get different kinds of stat bonuses. Once he has completed that metal bar, he'll use a couple of those to make a sword blade. And the sword blade will inherit the stat bonuses that the metal bars had. So not only does the fact that he's making an iron bar matter for his sword blade, and he's going to get stats on his finished weapon because he used iron in its construction, but he's also going to get bonus stats because he used Celestium as part of the process. So if you missed that in the video just then, he was creating iron bars of prowess, which is a different kind of Celestium dust. So what he's doing now, or I think I'm a little behind the video, but he's actually putting a weapon together, and in a moment we will see Ronak compare two different weapons. One of those weapons was made with an iron bar that he created and with just a basic sword hilt. I can't talk. The other weapon used a crafted sword hilt and some Celestium shards of the Inferno. So you can see he's equipping both weapons there, and showing you the difference in stats. And I want to talk for a moment about that hilt component, because that's where we introduce interdependency in Pantheon's crafting. So every profession in Pantheon will be able to create items on their own without having to rely on other players. They'll have all of the pieces and parts that they'll need to create the vast majority of their items. However, if you want to make a truly awesome item, if you want to make something that has better stats or that's more of a premium type of item, it's to your advantage to work with other crafting professions. So if you're that blacksmith making a sword, you can make a basic sword all by yourself. But if you happen to know an outfitter, or you go talk to an outfitter and you get them to make you a fancier sword hilt, that resulting sword that you're going to get is going to have slightly better stats. It's going to be just a little bit stronger, not by a lot, but enough so that there's a difference there. And we're encouraging interdependence.
So interdependence, different crafting classes working together for amazing boosts to the piece, should create a diverse economy of paying one another for services, and definitely some crafting guilds that will work together to make varying, rarer crafted items by working together. The really amazing thing that I start to think about is how it is very likely you will establish a relationship with a certain crafter, say a blacksmith, who goes the extra mile and makes a very specific type of item that really fits what you want out of it, and going back to that guy or gal when you want an upgrade. So once again, Pantheon, being known for being a social MMO, is taking crafting in that direction as well, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. On top of the options and uniqueness you can apply to your weapons while taking part in their glorious crafting features. Now, also worth mentioning is that those rare components, such as a rare hilt dropping out in the wild while adventuring, and then taking that to your favorite crafter to make you an even more unique piece. And things like that are really exciting and adds another layer to the already amazing world of Terminus in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Now, some interesting questions were asked and the community really squeezed for beans here, so let's run through my favorite ones. So, will there be crafting quests? The answer is yes, there will be different types, simple ones for faction or a bit of coin, making swords for guards for example, but also some longer, more storyline driven quests to get a new skill for your crafting profession or a special crafting tool. However, they want to not gate the content with these quests, so there will be some alternate ways to get the same results or rewards even. What about penalties to crafting? They want it to be balanced. For example, explosions from the forge or from a bad chemical mixed in alchemy will be a very rare thing, but possible. Of course, balancing all this out will come down to testing through the phases to come to the best result. Will crafting have mini games? To some degree, yes, there will be gameplay associated with crafting. They don't really like the word mini games, but different skills to use, different tools with stats. The point is that it is fun and engaging to the crafter, not mindless and boring. It is being looked at just like combat for adventuring as far as fun factor and how engaging it is. Will everyone be able to see gathering nodes? Yes. Even if you don't have the skill, you'll still see it so that you can reach out to your friends or guildmates to help you get it or tell your group if you see it and want it. Now, they will be generated in very random locations as well to try to stop people from camping specific spots, and they could be anywhere, dangerous areas, deep in the depths of a dungeon, all that kind of thing. But they do want there to be some risk involved, so the super rare things will be in super rare spots and that kind of thing. Will there be a limit to how much one can gather? Yes and no. These things have weight, obviously, so you can't just carry an infinite amount, as well as space in your inventory, right? So a chunk of ore isn't light. Once you start getting a bit of that, you'll have to travel and you'll have to store it. This will help with balancing along with the very random spawn points. Also, the way gathering works, it's important in Pantheon's system to go for variety, not simply quantity. And there will be gathering content, as was mentioned with crafting quests and things like that for gathering as well. What are the profession class types? So here's the ones Nefel mentions. Of course, this could change, right? But he mentions 6 for crafting, which is blacksmithing, outfitting, provisioning, alcheming, woodworking, jewel crafting. Now, those could change, but they are also, it's worth mentioning, they said they are starting points and could evolve throughout your crafting journey. Now, for gathering, they mentioned 5 types, and once again, these could change, more could be added, etc. But the 5 they mentioned were mining, woodcutting, harvesting, skinning, and fishing. Once again, could change. And he also did mention that they have some other ideas that are being tossed around as well. And once again, there will be opportunities to specialize beyond just those base types. The gatherers can also create some things with their items that will be beneficial to a corresponding crafter. What about making things in bulk? They are looking at it. In general, they don't want a lot of bulk production because it could affect the economy in bizarre ways, but perhaps making something like iron bars, there will likely be some options there, but they're not there yet. But of course, they are thinking of making it fun and not dreadful. How many professions can you have? For now, not set in stone, but leaning towards you pick one profession and you specialize in it. But for gathering, it may change, but potentially you can get the basics for all the gathering classes, but limit what you can specialize in and take further. What about pacing for progression in crafting? It's not something that they've been able to test yet, but they do want the progression to feel meaningful, so the pacing will be similar to what you would expect for adventuring. But it is very different, and it will be treated as such. Not too easy, but not too tedious either. What stops a guild from making a mafia and hoarding the good nodes or the rare nodes? It's just not going to be so easy to find. It's not just a percentage chance that it appears in the same spot that it did before. It's a very randomized system to make camping it very extremely difficult, if not downright impossible, to predict where those nodes will appear. And that's all the information kind of condensed here so that you could capture it all real quick. Of course, I would highly advise you go check out the full video if you want even more information, but I pretty much covered it all right here, so that gives you a really good insight look at crafting in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen with all the information that we're aware of right now. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me a comment down below on anything that we talked about, because that's a lot of information to digest. You want to talk about raining beans? It was raining the crafting beans in this stream. Drop me a like, leave me a comment down below what you think about it, or what did it make you think about, or what can you foresee these things meaning and how it's going to play out in the World Terminus and all that kind of thing. And thank you so much for watching my video today. I hope it was informational for you, and I hope you was able to digest it well as I designed it to be. And of course, guys, I'm going to give one one last shout out to the members of Napalm. Thank you all so very much. I could not do this without you. I really appreciate your support. And if you're interested in becoming a member and helping support this channel, please click the join button down below for more information and a list of perks. And of course, Mr. Reiko, who has contributed at the highest level, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, man. And until next time, guys, God bless and happy gaming.